Hello and welcome to Sport Africa, the programme fully dedicated to African sport. Coming up in the show. With Lewis Hamilton, a black Briton, winning F1 title number 6, what is stopping Africa from taking to the track? Meanwhile, the Masanga Tt is becoming hugely popular in East Africa. Africa by birth and by name too. Meet the Springboks' all-time leading Rugby Sevens point scorer, Cecil Africa.
I believe my surname has huge power. Just saying it in terms of Africa, it sounds so powerful.
Aisha Ahmad Suleiman is a Muslim woman who's succeeding in polo against the odds. And who will be this week's Armchair Expert? Hello and welcome to BBC Sport Africa, the show that brings you the human side of sport. I'm Isaac Fannin and I'm delighted to welcome you to a go-karting track just outside of London. Now, you might be wondering what it is we're doing here. Well, let me explain. Our first story is about Formula One. Lewis Hamilton has added more fuel to the fire that he is the greatest Formula One driver of all time with his 6th world title win. He started at go-kart tracks, just like this one, at the age of 8 years old, and he is within touching distance of Michael Schumacher's record 7 world title wins. But to this day, Lewis Hamilton is the only black driver to have raced in Formula One. But why? And will we ever see an athlete or a driver from Africa impact the sport? Let's take a look.
I wanted to become a Formula One driver.
I'd like to get into F1 and maybe one day be like Lewis Hamilton. He's my role model.
Lewis Hamilton is at the top of his game. He's claimed another Formula One world title and doesn't seem to be slowing down anytime soon. The Briton is a source of inspiration, not just for Brits, but for black people all over the world.
You know, Lewis Hamilton being the first black person to be in the Formula One circuit is so important because it has broken that glass ceiling where people thought that Formula One is an elite sport. And by virtue of him winning races and becoming #1 several occasions, it has made him aspirational. People who want to be in Formula One or any form of motorsports in Africa look at him as somebody who's an inspirational story.
But while the inspiration is there, there's no hiding from the fact that Africa is struggling to make its mark on Formula One. In fact, since 1980, the last time we saw an African in Formula One, other continents have raced forward and Africa has been left behind. Jody Scheckter, who is now based in the UK, was the last African who featured in the sport, winning the championship in 1979. He says the lack of African participation could be down to financial reasons.
I think it's just difficult because you need money to come in and race, and it's very expensive. I sponsored my 2 boys when they came from South Africa over here, and it was, I think it was £300,000 for one of their cars. You know, so it takes a lot of money.
And this guy knows all about the financial burden of trying to make it to the top.
To get where we are now, I've probably spent anywhere in the region between 3 and 4 million euro. I've raced in everything single-seater wise up to Formula One.
This was Axel speaking to us last year. Back then, he had big dreams of making it into Formula One. His camp now say that he has shelved those plans to concentrate on GT racing, which they say has a much longer shelf life. And the African who has come closest to breaking into Formula One in recent years is Alan van der Merwe, another South African. He was so close that he was all set to join a team before being told 3 days before that the team had made a U-turn. He's now a medical car driver, meaning at least in some capacity, Africa is represented on the track. He wishes he wasn't.
It is a huge missed opportunity not to be addressing the African market. There are so many people in Africa is really quite car crazy. I remember going and doing demos with F1 cars in Johannesburg, and the amount of people that turn out for that. They love cars, they love racing.
Despite this love of car racing, talks are ongoing to bring a Grand Prix back to Africa and back to Kyalami, the venue outside Johannesburg that last hosted an African F1 race over a quarter of a century ago. I'm now joined by Jeremy Wahome by way of Nairobi, a Formula 3 race car driver, 20 years old. Jeremy, how did you get into racing and Formula 3?
Thanks for having me.
No worries.
Yeah, I got into racing just like most young people like me do. I started when I was 8, just like at a track like this in Nairobi.
When he was 8, didn't he?
Yeah. Outdoor, not indoor. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I started, I loved it. I had so much fun. My dad then got me a 60cc competitive go-kart. Mm-hmm. So I joined the national championship in Kenya. And then since then, I've been progressing. I raced go-karts until I was 15. Then I moved up to Formula BMW in Asia, and then I've done Formula 3 for the past 3 years.
Is it your goal to make it into Formula 1?
So yeah, when I started racing and looking up, I started when Hamilton was actually winning his first world championship in 2008.
So was he like a role model then, I guess?
Yeah, I would say so. It's because, yeah, many people say Schumacher, Vettel, but just by the virtue of the fact, not because he's black or anything, but I started watching Formula 1 when he was winning his first world championship. So it's like, oh, actually, there's this thing like Formula 1. Then there's no Kenyan, so if I'm in this sport, then surely I must find a way to work up to the top. So that became my ambition, how to become the first Kenyan Formula 1 driver, and that's what's been driving me up to this point. Right now, at the moment, I would say my focus, I wouldn't say it's shifted, but almost getting into the trap where I'd get caught up in everything is Formula 1, Formula 1, Formula 1, and being so narrow-minded. So I'm trying to look at an approach where I just enjoy, because it's a privilege to drive cars like those. So every day I'm out, I'm just more looking to do my best and enjoy, not so much worry about what the end goal is.
So what kind of challenges are there for drivers looking to make it into Formula 1, especially from Africa?
Yeah, I think the main challenge with Formula 1 is there's this imaginary, should I call it imaginary barrier, where it is motorsport, you're dealing with very technological high-end cars, machinery. So there's always going to be such a big investment because it's very professional, there's teams, and you have to pay to use the car, the service, everything, the maintenance, you're racing across countries. So transporting all the cars, the equipment. So when you take that into account, you get to a place where you may be very good and skilled, even to the point where you get drivers who have won championships, but they simply can't move to the next step because they can't afford it. Or I've met drivers who they did so well, whether it's in go-karting or Formula 3 or Formula 4, and I asked them, what are you going to do next? And they're like, oh, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to do something else. I'm like, why? You're so good. But then they're like, it's too expensive. Or they don't even set their sights on Formula 1 because they know, oh no, it's too hard to get into Formula 1. There's too much money involved. There's too much politics, whatever. So there's this imaginary barrier where someone looks at it and says, actually, I can't get there because of the investment. So that's why now bringing it back to what I said earlier is whatever opportunity you've got, whether it takes you up to go-karting, is you do your best in go-karting. You never know what may lead up from go-karting. Someone may pick you up, or you do your best in Formula 3 and you may get prize money, or someone like Red Bull can be like, oh, maybe if you beat one of the other Red Bull juniors, they'll be like, maybe we should have you on our team. So as long as you're doing your best with whatever you've got, but it still doesn't take away from the fact that there's still this barrier where it's not skills that limit you anymore, but it's opportunity from lacking the investment to go racing.
Well, let's see whether that growth will happen. Jeremy, thank you very much for taking the time to speak to me. A little bit later on, we're going to be testing your skills. I'm going to giving a little race. I would like to say that I'm an excellent driver, the BBC Sport Africa Driver of the Year. I just made that award up. But our next story is to do with rugby. In South Africa, they're still celebrating the rugby world title that they won a few weeks ago in Japan. And Springbok fans will definitely be hoping that the 15 sides luck rubs off on the 7 sides as they prepare for the Olympics next year, which is also going to be in Japan. In 2016 at Rio, South Africa won the bronze medal, and they were led by a man with a very apt name. Cecil Africa is Boka's all-time leading sevens point scorer, and he's been catching up with my friend Carolyn Wachira in Nairobi.
Welcome to Kenya, Cecil, Africa. What a better place to start. Your name, Africa. Why Africa?
I wish I could answer that question. I guess that is because my mom and my dad was never married, and so I was fortunate enough to get my mom's last name. I believe my surname has huge power. Just saying it in terms of Africa, it sounds so powerful.
Does it feel like it's even a greater responsibility to represent the continent everywhere you go because of your name?
Now some people say, I like your name, it's cool, it's easy. There's this one commentator, he always says, when he says my name, Cecil Africa carries the name of his continent, Africa.
You are among the best sevens players, not only in the continent, but globally. But really, where did rugby all start for you?
I wouldn't say that I'm well known around the world in sevens. No, I'm not. I was really fortunate enough and blessed to grow up in a rugby community or sport environment. We used to play anything in the street. It depends what season it is. Cricket, rugby, soccer, tennis, whatever. We used to play that, but predominantly in our township it's rugby. So at the end of the day, I had to make a decision between rugby and soccer. Then obviously I chose rugby.
You are South Africa's sevens leading all-time points scorer. How does that make you feel?
It makes me feel proud, but it's about making sure we win and make our country proud at the end of the day. And I think sevens in general has grown massively.
You are a very quick player. You're a live wire.
I don't think I'm quick. I like to play the game 2 phases ahead in my head, like where we're going, and that's why I'll make the decisions much quicker and effective. That's why I'll look quick, but just that my decision is much quicker.
When you score a try, how does it feel?
It feels proud. I would like to be honest, like I don't really think or feel about it because it's our job to do that. So I just go and score a try, go back, try to kick off and play again because everything is just happening so quickly.
It gets boring probably scoring the tries.
No, it never gets boring, but it's just that if you have to score, you have to score.
In 2016 at the Rio Olympics, South Africa won a bronze. What memories do you have from the Olympics?
I don't like to talk about 2016 Olympics.
Because you didn't win a gold medal?
Yes. That also, I believe like we had plenty of opportunities that we didn't make use of it. But that squad of 2016 can be proud of what they've achieved. We were the first South African team, rugby sevens team, to win a bronze medal, and hopefully next season we can come back and win a gold medal in Japan.
All the very best.
Thank you very much.
And that's the end of part one, but when we come back, we'll be finding out about a tarmac racing competition that's taking Kenya by storm, and it's something I'm hoping I'll be able to emulate a little bit later on in the programme. This is Sport Africa from the BBC. Hello, welcome back to BBC Sport Africa. We're coming to you from a go-karting course in Farnborough. Now, our next story is about a motor racing competition that is taking Kenya by storm. It's known as Masanga Tt, and it has been very popular for a number of years now. And in the eastern part of the country, it is getting more and more popular. But there is some concern because 8 people recently died because of a car accident. And in the eastern part of Kenya, my good friend Victor Muyakane went and found out a little bit more.
This is Masanga Tt, the most popular tarmac racing event in East Africa, attracting top East Africa racing enthusiasts. They show up with their highly modified cars, some of them daily drivers and others dedicated track fiends, but all capable of catapulting you to triple-digit top speeds in single-digit time.
I'm told I'm a fast driver, So I decided to test it out on the track because it's not safe on the road. That's why we have speed limits and rules. But here it's a controlled environment where you can push your car to the limit.
The drivers here have a sense of invincibility and are thrilled by every gear shift and turbo boost.
Is that a good time for you?
Umang Soni is an enthusiast, a racer himself who has invested in Kenyan tarmac racing. He has reveled in the thrill that is the adrenaline rush, but has also suffered tragedy when it all goes wrong.
You know, we always felt like we were bulletproof, so to say. We always felt like it couldn't happen to us.
Umang's brother, Jay Soni, and best friend Amir Mohammed were involved in a deadly crash.
So my brother and I was in front, he was behind me. We were going together, and I saw Amir coming back. So I saw him, we smiled at each other. That was the last time I saw him. Right behind me was my brother. So I go to the other side, and I turn back. Coming back, I'm seeing smoke from a distance. As I get closer and closer, I've been told that Amir's car is fully gone. He was gone on the spot, and my brother is in the car, pretty badly stuck as well. He was in hospital for about three months approx, and didn't make it as well.
The safety question is always a concern with tarmac racing.
It's a risk. We are human beings. Human is to error. When you're moving fast, the margin of error shrinks. So you have to be careful. If you make a mistake, to correct it is a bit tricky.
One such miscalculation led to the death of 8 people on the spot during a racing event in Arusha over Easter of this year.
We never hold our events on open roads. And like they say, if you look at like today what has happened, it takes weeks, if not months of planning, getting the necessary permits, ensuring that the vehicles that participate have gone through scrutineering.
That was really interesting stuff on Masanga Tt there. I'm joined by our resident, our driving expert for today's episode, Jeremy Wahome. Jeremy, we've seen that in Kenya, that type of racing is getting more and more popular. Is motor racing getting popular in your country?
Yeah, I think the interest definitely is growing as a whole, whether it's regardless of what form of motorsport is, and you can clearly see the community, the motorsport community is growing, which is now what's leading to, like what you said, the Masanga Tt. But I think now what we'd need is, let's say, the infrastructure to support that all, because I think if we had our own Kenyan track, then that would solve a lot of people with all this interest, cars, and just a passion for the sport. We'd all be able to gather there and do it in a more safer manner. If we had like a purpose-built track, then we'd have a place to take all this passion and interest and adrenaline or whatever and bring it onto a track, and then people can test out the vehicles in a much safer environment, whether it's for the drivers themselves or for the marshals or for the spectators, because even they are at high risk.
Are there African countries that are interested in sponsoring African athletes like yourself?
What some companies would say is many Kenyans follow football. So why would we invest in motorsport when no one back home watches it? So it's almost as if it doesn't trickle down. It would stop at a point and no one knows, okay, what is they don't even know what Formula 3 is or Formula 1. So like, oh, I'm a Formula 3 driver. But they're like, what's that? We know Mariga, we know football and all that stuff. So I think with the interest growing, then it helps, it now justifies a decision to invest more in motorsport. So it all comes together, and then now you can have more drivers, you can have more infrastructure, more interest, races coming to Africa. It'll all help bring up the sport in Africa.
Jeremy, thank you very much for speaking to me. You're not going anywhere yet because we're going to be seeing you on that track a little bit later on when we have our big race. It's time now for this week's Armchair Expert.
My name is Abidemi Adetunbi from Nigeria. I am a national fan, and my favorite sport is football. And I am also a soccer coach. My favorite moment as an Arsenal fan is when we went unbeaten, which no English team has done up to date.
Bidemi, your time starts now. How many Olympic Games have been hosted in Africa?
None.
Correct. In basketball, how many players are there on each side?
5-5.
Correct. Who are the final three shortlisted for the FIFA's The Best Men's Player Award?
Messi, Ronaldo, and Van Dijk.
Correct. In tennis, what point follows a deuce?
I don't know.
Advantage. From what club did Sadio Mane join Liverpool?
Southampton.
Correct. From which country is athlete Wade van Niekerk?
South Africa.
Correct. Who is the AFCON all-time top scorer?
Samuel Eto'o.
Correct. From which country is Roger Milla?
Cameroon.
Correct. Who captained South Africa to her first FIFA Women's World Cup appearance?
Pass.
Janine Van Wyk. What country will host the next FIFA World Cup?
Qatar.
Correct. What do players hit in a game of badminton?
Pass.
Shuttlecock. And Bidemi, your time is up. You scored 8 points.
Yeah, I tried. I did not too bad for a coach and also a player.
Our final story this week is about Pola. Aisha Ahmad Suleiman is a Muslim player from Nigeria, and her love of the sport has caused her challenges and arguments. But she's hoping that her story will help inspire a new generation of polo players in Nigeria.
I love horses. They're just amazing creatures. To me, polo is a way of living. I developed interest when I watched the Kaduna annual tournament here at the Kaduna Polo Club. My name is Aisha Ahmed Suleiman. I am a polo player and I've been playing polo since 2017. I faced a lot of challenges, insults, discouragement, people trying to embarrass me because I play. I lost friends, loved ones, but then I understood that trying to chase your dreams, you have to cope with a lot of challenges like this. I learned more about horses before even playing my first tournament in December 2017. But then there was no female playing. My mom was against it at first. I remember when I had my first fall, I had a serious injury. At home, I couldn't tell her the truth. But then with time, I got to show her that this is something I have passion for. I've played up 3 international tournaments. I've won almost 5 tournaments with trophies and medals. I want to leave a legacy. I want to keep history in the northern part of Nigeria. I want to be somebody that most girls will look upon. I want people to say, yeah, I started playing polo because Aisha did.
What an inspirational story that was. That's all we've got time for in this week's episode of Sport Africa. We've been promising you a race all episode, and here it is. I have Jeremy Wahome, who's been insightful throughout, who's going to show me the ropes on this course. And I've also brought my good friend, BBC Sport Africa's, Machezo Africa's, Peter Masembi in the back there. Thank you very much to Jeremy for his insight. It's time for us to race. On 3, 2, 1, go!